So welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Lentz. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm chair of the board at the Portland Public Schools and excited to be on this committee. I'm going to be serving as kind of like a de facto facilitator tonight. That will not be my long-term role, but tonight, as we're working to still get another facilitator in place, that's going to kind of be my role. So did everybody get the agenda? Does everybody have the agenda? Okay, yeah, I respond to head nods really well, or thumbs up. All those signals are great for me. And so that's just what we're going to do. We're going to go through there. But what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to share with you a tool called Miro. Has anybody, by show of hands, ever used Miro before? Yeah, okay, a couple people, that's great. So Miro is basically an online like whiteboard that you can use. It's just a kind of technology that when you're meeting virtually, sometimes it helps you feel a little bit more connected and interactive. So that's what I've set our meeting up on tonight. If you're somebody that doesn't like new technologies or this feels overwhelming, that is totally fine. I will give you workarounds if this just doesn't feel like the way that you want to engage. That's totally fine. We'll use the chat and you and I can interact through the chat in Zoom, and I'll plug kind of like any responses or activities into the Miro board for you. So I just give you that kind of like heads up before I show you the Miro board so you don't get overwhelmed. But we're gonna, if you haven't used it, I think I'll give you a couple of cues here, some instructions, and hopefully we can work on it together. So let me start this. So we are going to start with our goals tonight. Can everybody see that okay? Beautiful. Thank you. William, I love the head nod. Thank you. So here we have our goals. I'll read these and then there'll be time for other folks to read some things and get your voices in here as well. But our goals tonight are to understand the strengths and experiences of the committee. So we had over 60 people apply to be on this committee, and it was just like an amazing, amazing group of folks that everybody brought a combination of lived experience and learned experience and just a lot of expertise. And so there's some rich skill and strengths within this room. And so I want us to get familiar with what is here and all the tools and strengths that we'll have to be able to use throughout this experience. We're going to revisit why this work is happening, understand the scope of this work and the bound of this project and the role of the committee. We're going to understand the timeline of this work, so how long we're all going to be meeting together. And then hopefully we're going to have time to move into, sorry, I now have a barking dog and a child coming in, so bear with me. But understanding the basic data and demographics of the district. Okay. And then, would anybody like to read out this mission? I see somebody in the chat. Oh, thank you. Anybody can...
Sarah.
Thank you, Ariel. Go ahead.
The Portland Public Schools is responsible for ensuring a challenging, relevant, and joyful education that empowers every learner to make a difference in the world. We build relationships among families, educators, and the community to promote the healthy development and academic achievement of every learner.
That was beautifully done. And then also, how about our definition of equity as the Portland Public Schools? Would anyone like to read that? And if you would like to, you can just come off of mute and do it.
I can do it. Definition of equity. Equity is all people being held to high expectations and having access to opportunities that are reflective of their individual needs, identities, and experiences. Equity is achieved in Portland Public Schools when there are no identifiable differences in outcomes and experiences for any population subgroup. This means race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ethnicity, etc.
Thank you, Annie. That's awesome. And so now we're going to work on the Miro board just a little bit together. Hold on one second. Okay. So here going to share the link of this board in the chat. So if folks want to hit that link, and hopefully you'll be able to come right into this board with me. I see people coming in, which is awesome. Oh, yeah, beautiful. So this first little exercise we're going to do today is just to get us familiar working in Miro. And again, if this doesn't feel like it's working for you for any reason, or you have questions, feel free to use the chat. All right, so can everybody see the goats? Can everybody move their mouse onto the goats? Beautiful. Beautiful. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to come to the left of the goats and you're just going to pick up a dot. You can, you just click on it and then you hold and you can move that dot. And on the goat scale, how are you feeling today? So you pick up a dot and you can go and put it on one of the goats that best represents how you're landing in this space today. Beautiful. Okay, I see a lot of dots moving. Well done, everyone. Good job. Good job. Okay, let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 dots moving. 5, 6, 7. Beautiful. Okay. I see a couple more dots still moving. So people are figuring it out. Great job. I really appreciate that the dots are evenly spaced. I don't know if you are doing that on purpose, but everybody seems to be their own goat today, which is great. Okay, so that is how Miro works, basically. And the next exercise that we're going to do is very similar. I'm going to ask you to click on something, and you don't even have to move it. You're just going to click on it and type it. Okay, so that was our experiment, and now we can move on to kind of getting to know each other a little bit better. So if you move down on the Miro board, you're going to see this big thing. It looks like a checkerboard. And on our left of this checkerboard is a list of names. So these are all the committee members. And then we also have another list of committee members right here. So can everybody move their mouse over their name? Can you find your name and put your mouse right over it? Beautiful. Ryan, your mouse, you don't have a sticker. You're down below. It's okay. Oh, did I miss anyone? That's okay, Hannah. Perfect. Okay, so great. Everybody's found their sticker. So the next thing that you're going to do, and this is just like a getting to know you exercise. So we've created these small little blurbs in your sticky note from your application. So they're just like little facts about you that we extracted from the application. And what I would love for you to do now is to use these white stickies to tell us 2 more things about yourself. Okay, so for example, I'm down here. I would say, I love the ocean more than most things. And then I would go over here and give another fact about myself. Another fact is I've worked in nonprofits for about 20 years. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to fill up those white stickies with just 2 facts about yourself, things that you feel like would be helpful for the group to know about you. And when you're done with the white stickies, you're going to use the teal stickies to type in the biggest question you have coming into this space today. Awesome. Y'all are pros at this. This is great. And if you get done with your stickies, you can take some time to move around and read what people are writing. Thank you, Priscilla. Priscilla, if you want to drop your responses into the chat, we can add them. I don't know why it's not letting you add them, but that's okay. Grace and Priscilla, yeah, put your responses in the chat and I will add them onto your stickies. Beautiful. And again, once you get through with your white stickies, if you want to use the teal sticky for a question that you're bringing into this space. We'll take just another couple of minutes and then we're going to share these out so we can get everybody's voice in the room. Okay. Beautiful. I think we're almost there. And when you're done on the teal sticky, if you click outside of it, then we'll all be able to read it. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this up to the big screen so we can see it a little bit clearer. Beautiful. And we're just going to start at the top of this list, and folks can share out, the facts that are here, but you're just going to introduce yourself. So names and pronouns are the most important thing. And then you can add maybe one or two things about yourself as we go through. So we'll start with Annie. Go ahead, Annie.
Have to go off soon. So just our two facts.
Yeah, so your name, your pronouns, and then, two facts. And they can be the ones that are up here. If you are moved to share something else, that's totally fine also.
So name is Annie Fenton, she, her. I'm from Central Maine, Oakland to be specific. And as a PhD researcher, I'm really into numbers.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Annie. And Kate Knox is not here with us tonight, but Kate is a parent and has been really involved in civic engagements, also a lawyer. So hopefully she'll be with us at the next meeting. Up next, we have Damon.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Damon Yakovlev. I work as a community planner. I do a lot of geospatial analysis, make a lot of maps. I work for the town of Gorham. I've lived in Portland since 2008 and have 2 kids in the Portland Public Schools, one going to pre-K, the other into 3rd grade, both at Rose School. And yeah, excited to be here. Live in Libbytown. And know a lot of parents who have kids in Rose School, but looking forward to hearing other perspectives from other school districts, and just looking at all this data is going to be really fun. So glad to be here.
Awesome. I also love that we have the word geospatial on this this chart twice. So thank you for that, Damon. Up next, we've got Marley.
Hi, my name's Marley Rodriguez. I'm 15 and I go to Deering High School. I'm an incoming junior. And some stuff about me is I work at the Portland Sea Dogs. And so it's a seasonal job. So I work there in the summer selling concessions. And that's really fun. I work with a lot of friends and like made a lot of new friends from it. And I guess I'll just share the other fact I wrote. I'm really into sports, like professional sports, and my favorite sport to watch is probably football. And my favorite team's the Dolphins because I was born in Miami.
Thanks so much, Marley. Hannah, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name is Hannah DeAngelis. My pronouns are she, her. I live in the Longfellow district, and I have a 2.5-year-old and a 3-month-old who will often be with me, who's here right now. I worked in refugee settlement for all the time I've been in Portland, about 10 years since I became a parent. I just haven't been in that field. But yeah, I'm from Central Maine. I've done a bunch of dance movement stuff in Portland, and I'm really happy to be with you all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hannah. And who is the baby that's with you? What's
This
their
is
name?
Noah. Is their name
Noah.
anyway? Yeah.
Welcome, Noah. And Lauren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Gaucher. My pronouns are she, her. I currently work for the state of Maine at Maine CDC, and I'm from Louisiana originally, and I've been living in Maine for about 5-6 years now. I enjoy swimming, and Marley, I love football as well, especially being from the South, something I love to watch. And I have a summer food truck business called Little Izzy Snowballs, where I make shaved ice on the side to make people happy when it's hot outside.
I love little snowballs. It's so good. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren. Ariel.
Hi, I'm Ariel Lynette. I use she, her pronouns. I live in North Deering with my husband and my 3-year-old, who will go to Lyseth and more someday. But we already enjoy the playground. I've lived in Maine full time since 2016, although my parents moved here to Freeport in 2006 when my dad got a job at LL Bean. And I was the children's advocacy lawyer at Disability Rights Maine for about 4 years, and I've been at Maine Behavioral Health Care running a statewide youth peer support program for mental health since 2021. So thanks. Really nice to meet all of you.
Thank you. Rob, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Foster. I guess you could say I'm a lifelong Portlander, but I've had significant stints out of the state. I've attended public school here, went to elementary at Hall School. Now, I'm blanking the name. I should know the name. I went to Lincoln Middle School and also Portland High School. I have a not kindergartner, but I do have an upcoming pre-K-er and a second grader at Longfellow. I'm an attorney by trade. I don't actually practice. I write for a living. I work for Thomson Reuters. And I also serve on 2 public commissions here in the city, the Parks Commission and the Land Bank Commission. So if anyone has questions about those, feel free to reach out offline.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Priscilla.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priscilla Betancourt. I am the McKinney Vento Liaison for Portland Public Schools. So I help families and kids who are experiencing homeless. I'm also a social worker, but I'm currently not working as a social worker in the Portland district. I am originally from Brazil, but I have been living in Maine for the last 7 years, but in the US for 30 years. I love traveling. I love the ocean. And an interesting fact about me is that I also have an automobile detailing business with my husband in Scarborough. And my pronouns is she and hers.
Thank you, Priscilla. And William.
Hi, my name is Bill Lamb. My pronouns are he and him. I've spent most of my life in Portland. I went to Lyseth and Lyman Moore and Portland High. I live out in Mason's Corner. My kids went to Hall and Rowe and Lincoln, and now they're both at Deering. I've been driving school buses for Portland for 9 years, and I've been the trainer for Portland for about the past 3 years. And I'm also the secretary of the base union, so I represent all the educational support professionals. And I'm excited to see what we can do here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bill. Marisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisa Ayala, they, them. I'm the principal at Lincoln Middle School. On my stickies, I noted I'm a musician and I am a PPS parent. I got a 3rd grader and a kindergartner at Rowe. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Beautiful. Boyd, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I have my screen off just because I've been sick all week, so I'm a bit of a mess. Pronouns are he, him. Like I was saying, 2 of my 3 kids went through, graduated Deering. And I'm happy to hear about the football fans because even though I'm from Maine, I was raised in Georgia, so go Dogs. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Boyd. I'm up next. I do have a kiddo in the in Ocean Ave. I've been on the board for several years. I'm the chair. And I'm just really excited about this work. It feels like it's kind of like the core to everything else we're trying to do in the district. So excited to be here. And Yusra.
Hi, my name is Yusra. I am the at-large seat member. I love going on walks. I use she, her, hers. I love going on walks with my mother. They're really fun. I grew up in South Africa, and so I noted that I'm fighting to retain my Afrikaans and keep that multilingual label. But it's nice to meet you all.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. And I think, Dr. Scallon, do you want to introduce yourself? And then if there's anybody here from your team?
Sure. Ryan Scallon, I use he, him. I have been with the district as a superintendent for just over a year. I have 3 kids actually in the district as well. I have 2 that will be at King next year, 1 in 6th grade, 1 in 8th grade, and then I have a 3rd grader at Rowe. And I know a lot of people said they like the ocean. I don't mind the ocean, but I hate sand. So you can find the ocean without sand. We can talk. But I also get seasick, so I can't like jump straight into the ocean and skip it. That just doesn't work. Grace is here, I believe, as well.
Yeah, that's right. Ariel says we have rocky coasts. So Find those, Ryan.
That's true. Okay, I'll do that. Grace, you want to go? Maybe she's here. She's here.
She's definitely chatting. Yeah.
I am talking, but I'm talking to myself. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Grace Valenzuela. I'm the Executive Director for Communications and Family Community Partnership for the district. I've been here since I was 4 years old in Portland Public Schools. So I've been working for a long time in Portland. Started here as a teacher at King Middle School and love Portland. So I love Portland. I love to garden, and one known fact, I don't know if it's interesting. I don't know. I find my life is interesting, but so I think that's it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Great to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Grace. Anybody else here from central office, Ryan? Nope. Okay, perfect. And we may meet more people as this committee moves through, but that's who is here tonight. And so now I'm going to move us to talk about why we're here. And everybody in this group may be coming in with a little bit of a different level of knowledge. So we just want to just review kind of like the resolution that the board passed and why the board passed this resolution. So this is also linked at the bottom of the agenda, I believe. I'm going to put it up on the screen just so you see it. So over the course of probably the last decade, there's been a lot of work that has been done within the district to think about how we district our attendance boundaries, how we use our facilities across the city. And there's been several different permutations of things that have happened over the years, but none of those kind of projects have really resulted in any change. And so what we have seen over time, and this happened actually in our high schools as well, is we started to see a real imbalance of enrollment, both in numbers and also in some demographic categories like race or free and reduced lunch status or lingual status or McKinney-Vento status. And so we've noticed that there are these big disproportionalities, especially within our elementary schools. And that can have a big impact both on the services that need to be provided in the school, but also that some schools really miss out on what I think is one of our biggest strengths, which is our diversity across the district. And so really the board was wanting to put through a resolution so that we could look at what's happening within our elementary schools and say, is there anything that we can do about this and change the ways that our enrollment is happening across the district? And then the other thing that was happening kind of at the same time was in our middle schools, the model that is set up for our teachers and our staffing at our middle school is set up for more students than we have enrolled in the middle schools. And so as part of this enrollment and boundaries conversation, it felt important to include that in this conversation. And also, as most of you probably know, our funding that we get from the state has stayed relatively flat over the last couple of years, and we expect that to happen or potentially decline in the future. And so it is very important that we are looking across the district and in many ways as possible in finding the most amount of efficiencies that we can without, cutting into program quality. So that's another piece of this work. Dr. Scallon, is there anything that you would add to that? And I'm going to go to the second page here if I can.
I think so.
While you're talking. That covered it? Okay, beautiful. So then the next thing that we have is just the role of this committee in context with the other people that are involved. So Dr. Scallon, I'm going to turn this over to you to kind of talk about how all these different groups, you see them playing together over the course of this next few months.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I think it's important to understand where this committee sits relative to this work. And this was asked in part of the board exercise we just did a second ago, where folks asked what's the sort of like level of decision making. I think the charge that is in the resolution is that the boundary committee is making a recommendation to the board of any adjustments to the boundary that the board would then vote on and finalize, potentially for as soon as the 25-26 school year. The resolution speaks to the fact that this would be in time for potential impact to fiscal year 26. And so this committee, I think of as having a really strong influence about any and all changes that would happen. I do want to emphasize that the way the resolution is and the way it's designed is around it's making a recommendation, not that it's the final deciding. And this is similar actually to how we did the steering committee for the strategic plan. But if you looked at the strategic plan that was passed by the board, it looks very, very similar to what was recommended by the strategic plan steering committee. And so I think there's a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility that sits on this committee. Recognizing that, we want to make sure that you have all of the information and are really supported in the work that you're doing. And so first, we have and we'll be staffing up what we're considering like the executive committee. This is as best described, the staff from the school district that will be working to make sure that when you meet, all of the materials you need are ready and organized and given to you in advance, making sure that if there's data that we need to have prepared for that meeting, that it's ready. That when we're coming and asking questions around decisions, like what demographics are we going to prioritize, or what pieces in terms of map features we want to make sure are included in the next iteration. The executive committee has done the legwork so that you're informed as you're making some decisions. And so the executive committee will include myself, Grace Valenzuela. It will include principals. It will include members of our transportation, communications, multilingual team, as well as some of our academics, to make sure that we have a well-rounded staff that's providing support here. I think of them as sort of like the worker bees to make sure that this committee has the staff to be supported. We do have, right, so to the question of GSI and mapping, the district has worked with a group called Davis Demographers and plan to continue to work with them to produce what will be the final map. They're the group that has worked with the district for, I think, a number of years in past shifts, in past work around our enrollment projections. And so they already have our current maps, as well as all of our enrollment data and our student demographic data. And so they, assuming we can plan for it based on the committee's availability and finalizing committee meeting dates, our hope is to have them at the next meeting to preview for you or to go over with you our current map and what it looks like, as well as what the sort of iterative process we would go through to move through a couple of maps over the next several meetings. And so Davis Demographics is the demographer. As Sarah shared, we're in the process of finalizing a facilitator so that Sarah is not in a spot where she's facilitating these meetings, but is able to fully engage in the meetings. And so we'll have a facilitator. And then I would say that there are two additional groups that we want to make sure that we are fully bringing along in this process. One is the community. And so I anticipate, just my gut based on knowing many of the people in this, as well as reading what you shared in the application, is that there's going to be community engagement that happens in this process, whether that's through focus groups or others. And so figuring out how are we communicating this work and where we're at in decision points, as well as getting feedback along the way, as well as our school leaders, recognizing how important they are, both in terms of getting feedback and making sure that they're able to communicate with their individual school communities about any decisions. And so as school staff will, or as district staff will think about how to communicate that, but just also thinking about them as one of the key groups here. Sarah, anything you want to add there?
No, I think that got it. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then we're going to go to one more chunk of information, and then we're going to stop to do some questions. So this is the timeline that we're looking at for our meetings and kind of getting to that list of recommendations that will go to the board at the end of this process. So meetings, the way that we've scheduled them right now, are on the fourth Thursday of each month. They will be online from 5 until 6:30. And these are the dates of the meetings. You should have gotten calendar invites for them. Just to note, we did add a second meeting in January just because we think we may have to double up that month. And, you know, if we get really ahead of ourselves and we get to our recommendations super early, I am one that will cancel meetings. So if we don't need meetings, we will cancel them. But we wanted to go ahead and get those dates saved on your calendar just in case we need them all. And I think we probably will. And if you are not able to make a meeting, Ryan, who at this point should people contact? Should be me or Kate, or who should people let know?
I think you should let two people know. I think you should let myself know and Kate Phoenix, who is the board secretary, and I will put both of our emails in the chat as well as in the follow-up notes that come out.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now I think what I would like to do is to pause before we start getting into demographics of the district and just see what questions are in the room right now. And feel free to use your Zoom hand to raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Okay, I'm seeing, oh yes, okay, perfect. There they go. I knew they were coming. Okay, Damon, you go ahead first. I see you first. Go ahead.
All right. Just a basic question. What is the existing map? Because I was looking and I was not able to find it online. Is it posted somewhere? I saw a way to look up by streets what school district you may fall into, but is there a map showing what the current boundaries are, just to kind of get started?
Ryan, do you know the answer to that? I've never actually seen the map. I've only seen the by street document.
So I'm embarrassed to say I don't know if there's a map posted online. What I have seen is the map with the demographer, where I have sat down with her and she has pulled it up on her computer and walked me through it. I don't know how exactly that will be shared with the committee. And we have also talked about getting for lack of a better term, a PDF of that to easily post up there. And I don't know where that left off in terms of that ask. So I'll follow up on it, both for the PDF version as well as the interactive version.
Beautiful. Thank you. Ariel, go ahead.
Thanks. I think probably similarly to Damon, trying to kind of like familiarize myself a little bit. And so I pulled up the list of all the elementary and middle schools. And it occurred to me in looking at the list to wonder if we have anybody on this committee from either or both of the island schools, because they're obviously in sort of a unique position.
Yes, that is a great question. We did not have anyone apply from the island schools to be on the committee. That said, you know, I have some good relationships with the folks on Peaks, and I think that when we get to community engagement, that will be really important to go to the island and engage specifically there. But I do not believe that there's anybody in this committee with that affiliation. Any other questions at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Do we have any protocols for how to share information about this, let's say on social media? I'm just like wondering if there's a time frame for like when we should reach out? I mean, it's pretty early right now. Maybe now's not a good time, but maybe in the coming months.
Yeah. So I'm going to draw again from the strategic planning process. When we got to the point where it felt like we had enough of a plan to be able to share, then what we did was we scheduled community conversations, and we had a schedule. We divided and conquered, and all went out into the community to get feedback on what we had. So I would assume that we will do something similar to that. And so when we have something that is shareable, I think that we will make a plan around that. However, in the meantime, like, I do think it would be awesome if you're talking within your neighborhoods and your networks and your friends about that this is happening. I think that there's still a level of awareness in the community that could be raised up about this, so that it doesn't come as a surprise for folks that this is happening. And we'll continue to do that within our communications as well. Great question, though.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over. Ryan, are you good to do some demographic data overview of the district?
I am. Can I do just one piece around the timeline?
Yeah, of course.
So on the timeline that Sarah put up, she put up the dates of the meetings. When we think about the process, those are the starting dates, right? We have what I would think of as a fairly aggressive time frame for this work. And what we found in the strategic planning process is that the committee was pretty agile and fluid, and started with a set of dates and then adjusted and added a couple of meetings and moved a couple of meetings based on what worked best for them in terms of wanting to do a couple of things in person, to really dig in and wrestle, and moved a couple of dates where they wanted to go back to back with some information. And so I think those are the starting spots, and may adjust. And we may find that we're able to get it all done in that compact time, and we may find that we need a longer window. And so just want to name that. When you think about this from an impact in terms of when we're trying to get the work done, right? In an ideal state, it's fast. And so to impact fiscal year 26, that map proposal is sometime in that February, March window. And so just want to have you have that in the back of your mind about that sort of time frame. And so just that's fast, and it's possible, and it's fast. So just want to name that.
And if we need to add any meetings, we'll get input from the group about what time works. We'll try to give you as much notice as possible. We'll always have a virtual option, even if it's in person. Try to make it so that as many people as possible can join.
So I did share with the agenda a couple of additional links that you should be able to access. We will provide additional data to you along this process. And one of the questions we will ask you, I believe, in the next meeting, based on how we're mapping it out, is exactly what data we want to prioritize in this process. And so what I'm going to share with you tonight is not all of the data. In fact, giving you data by PDF of things is not that helpful, right? When you're really wrestling with the information. But it goes to what Sarah had shared at the beginning, just in terms of some of the big changes that have happened in the district over the last 10 years. And so this is sort of to capture the why of this. And in the next meeting, we'll ask you sort of what data do we really want to prioritize and do we want to look at? And not just overall enrollment, but things like school capacity. And what does it look like? And what demographic factors are we considering? And how do we think about transportation and distance and all these types of things so that we're able to get you the data that's helpful? But today, just to give you an overview to start with, first thing I'm going to do here is pull up overall enrollment for the schools. Just got to find the right screen. Someone just give me a head nod if they can see that. Great. And is it big enough? No. Okay, there we go. It's my first time using Zoom tonight, evidently. All right, what you can see here, and it's available as well, is you can see showing you from 2013 to 2014 to 2023, 2024 school year. The elementary schools, Rob, you were trying to think about your elementary school. Hall became Rowe. So right up here at the top. And you can see the 10 schools. You can see the 3 middle schools, and then you can see the high schools. And you can see pretty significant variation of individual schools within schools, right? So you can see that we have a 500 kid elementary school and a 253 kid elementary school. You can see also that the schools have ranged over that time, right? That Reiki in the last 10 years has grown by 130 kids. And so pretty significant change there. The middle schools, you can see more closely bunched together and less variation over the 10 years, but ebbs and flows. And then high schools, which is really outside the scope of it, but you can see some pretty significant change. And so this is shared with you, but it shows that variation between the schools. And you can see my favorite are 2 students at Cliff Island. A very Maine fact. So coming from outside of Maine, one of my favorite features. And then at the beginning of last school year, we did an organizational diagnostic. And so we will share with you all of the breakdown of student demographic data. But this provided just like a good overall summary that showed you the difference between schools. Right? And so just as a high level, right, it's a little over 6,600 students now between the 18 schools. A little more than 50% of students identify as students of color. And it talks about pretty consistent overall student enrollment, but you see the ebbs and flows between the schools. And then if we dug in overall student population, some things that just pop out at people who have not paid too much attention to like big changes in student population overall. 26% of our students identify as multilingual learners. 41% are identified as economically disadvantaged. And here's where you see some pretty big differences between schools in terms of percent of students of color, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, students having an IEP, and percent of students who are multilingual. And so if we look at 2 schools, East End at 74% of students of color and 50% multilingual. On the other end of the continuum, Longfellow is 23% students of color and 5% multilingual. And so you see some pretty significant differences. It is 65% economically disadvantaged at East End and 34%. This is in, I don't have the school year here, but this is probably in 22-23 when this data would have been pulled. And so it gives you a sense of what Sarah was sharing in terms of the differences between the schools. And so I can leave this up and see if there are questions just about this, just from an understanding piece. Oh, and Grace, yeah, do you want to voice over anything?
I just want to highlight that the state and the Department of Education changed the name of English learners to multilingual learners. So what you're seeing here as numbers are English language learner students percentages. They are not necessarily the old multilingual students, meaning students who speak another language other than English at home. So if you account for those who are not necessarily receiving English language support services anymore, we have over 30%. It's not the 26%. So the 26% is only the English learners.
Sorry, what does SWD mean?
It's a student who has an IEP.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just add one other kind of like impact of these things that we've been talking about a lot in the district is the school's ability to fundraise. I don't know if any of you are on your school's PTOs, but we also see huge differences in what a school fundraises. You know, there are some schools that raise $30,000 a year, and there are other schools that raise $2,000 a year. And so like these disproportion isn't just the student population, it like goes out into all areas of the school and the school community too.
I'm curious, are there any metrics on how many, what the population is of just children in these district areas? I'm curious specifically about how many kids have exited or never entered PPS to go to private school.
I'm sure there is. I don't have it. But I'm sure there is. And it's something we should ask for.
Yeah. Because I know we could get basically just like the census data, first of all, about the number of young people in Portland. And then I think it was 2 years ago, we did start to measure like the number of young people that were entering a high quality daycare, and then how many moved, or preschool, and then how many moved from that high quality pre-K into Portland Public Schools versus not into Portland Public Schools. So I know that that data is floating around somewhere, Ryan. What other things are people curious about or have questions on? Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I guess sort of piggybacking off that question, is there consistency between grades, I guess, once kids shift over to middle school, or is there like a drop off maybe in the number of students? I'm trying to wrap my head around the underuse of the middle schools. Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Ryan, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers. There is anecdotally a drop in terms of students going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and us seeing students exit Portland Public Schools and enrolling in some private school options at that point. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you.
At just a high level, I guess I'm curious, and maybe this isn't the right time for this question, but in terms of sort of the blunt tools at our disposal or at the district's disposal, are we primarily talking about redrawing lines, or are we potentially also talking about busing? Does that make sense? Like, do we have to group students by like contiguous areas in the city, or might we possibly talk about transporting students to other parts of the city where they don't live?
I mean, Sarah, I'm happy to answer. I mean, I think that is a question that could be explored by the committee, and one that could be weighed, right? So I think that that is something that if you go to our neighbors to the south, right, that is actually exactly what they're looking at. Is they're looking at busing students to address inequities in terms of, or disproportionality in terms of their student population. So they're looking at that. There are different challenges that come with that, right? And different trade-offs. And I think that that's why we have the committee that we have, right? Where we have people that come from all different ranges and experiences to say, what's the trade-off? And what's the value of the community school versus the transportation versus the student demographic and the makeup. And so I think that is a question that would be on the table for this group. And our tools would allow that 100% to be part of the discussion. I mean, I think our tools are pretty sophisticated for actually doing that map.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would just say from the board perspective, the board does not have an opinion yet on either direction of those. I think we just know that things have to change, and we'll be looking to this committee for that recommendation. Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, so well, I have a bunch of questions, but I guess on follow-up to that one, I'd be curious to know to what extent students are already going to schools that are not in their geographic districts, such as I know that there's for the Spanish immersion program. I wonder what other circumstances that might occur and if there's numbers behind that. Also curious to know sort of the trend over time. I know that's something we're probably going to want to look at is looking at that chart was great, showing the various factors attributed to each school. And yeah, so I'm curious to see like what the trends are. Yeah, and I think maybe that question is of what kind of voluntary redistribution might occur and under what circumstances. So I definitely think that's something to look at. I also had, I guess I'll throw this out too. If we did make changes to the geographic districts, and what would happen to existing students? I know that that's something a lot of people probably be wondering about, and also if their siblings would they sort of continue on with the district they started with, or that their oldest siblings started with. So I'm just curious about how that might be handled. And I know that people in the community may be curious about that question in particular and maybe worried about it.
Beautiful. And I'm just capturing all of these questions. This committee will come up with answers to all of those questions, but I'm capturing them so that we can make sure that we circle back to all of them. Because I also think that those kinds of questions are the things that will be really important when we get to the community engagement section. Any other questions about the district or the data that you saw?
I'm assuming it's possible to break down by like considering intersectionality, like how many students fall across like different categories simultaneously.
It depends on the categories you talk about, obviously. But yes, right? So we can look at a number of student demographic data all at the same time. We should be able to. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to one of Damon's questions. I think one of his questions was, the first question was around, he was curious to know what kids was enrolled in and out of neighborhood schools. And I just wanted to throw out there and to include the kids that are experiencing homeless. We do have an enrollment process for those kids, especially the elementary school kids. We try to enroll them based on transportation and really trying to meet the needs of those kids, best needs of those kids. So we look into what services those kids will be receiving at each school. So we try to identify what the best school would be for that family. So they are across the district, not necessarily where they're sleeping that night.
And Priscilla, would you want to just give a little bit more context about like if a student moves after they come into the district and they qualify as a McKinney-Vento status, what happens to them?
So they are considered McKinney-Vento until they find permanent housing. So we are obligated by law to provide transportation and keep them in the school of origin until they find permanent housing. So let's say they arrive and they are at the family shelter, which is Chestnut Street, and they are enrolled at Ocean Ave, and then they are placed at a hotel, which is Motel 6, which is a rural neighborhood. We have to provide transportation from Motel 6 to Ocean Ave. If they find housing at a Talbot neighborhood for that current school year, the family will still have the option of either staying in the school of origin or transfer to the neighborhood school for that current school year. And then for the next school year, they will be transferred to the neighborhood school if their house is permanent, only if the house is permanent. If it is out of district, we also give them the option, and then we work with the other district to provide transportation.
Thank you. I think that's helpful context for folks to know. Rob, go ahead.
I just sort of wanted to maybe answer Damon's question. Our daughter was granted a waiver to go out of district from, I guess we're technically supposed to go to Talbot, to Longfellow on a diversity basis. I don't know if there's even a formal process for doing this, but we sort of, I guess 2 years ago, there was a waiver process, but we sort of went through it and we had to sit down with the superintendent at the time and he granted it. But I guess looking at the issues in the district, it's not the type of thing that most people are probably going to be wanting to do or willing to do. So I don't know if it's really going to be helpful at, trying to rebalance, I guess, the demographic issues at the schools.
Appreciate you sharing that, Rob.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I have another thing that I'm wondering, and great. I hope I'm not talking too much, but I don't want to put anyone on the spot, and I'm very little involved with the district because my kid isn't actually old enough to go to school yet, and I know that there are always lots of dynamics that I'm not, that the average person wouldn't be aware of. But I am curious to hear from Marisa and Boyd just what sort of the feeling is among your school communities. Like, are people wanting to see a redistricting, or is it not even being talked about, or sort of what are the concerns or desires on the individual school level? I know you each only represent one school out of the district, and maybe this is a better discussion as we get further into the process, but I guess I just want to be mindful that I myself feel very removed from the impact that the not decisions but recommendations we make are going to have on people's day-to-day lives. And so I'd just love to hear if either of you happen to want to share.
This is Boyd. I can weigh in just a little bit. I think one of the things that I see from my vantage point is not necessarily a lot of talk about the redistricting piece, but it's the piece where I have 2 open classrooms, for example, that so we don't have enough students for those classrooms, and other schools are busting at the seams so that they're having to go into non-classroom space to create classrooms. And that's simply just the demographics of areas that are getting more development, if you will. And that seems like a lot of it's off peninsula, but a lot of the schools are on peninsula. So it creates inequities, I think. So it's those sort of things, if you will, that from my vantage point that I see at this point.
Thanks for the question. So I haven't engaged my community around this conversation, but I do know that as part of the RIF process this past year, there was a lot of nervous energy about increasing the class sizes in middle school. And it's mostly due to the fact that right now, we are seeing a high need in like social emotional supports for middle school students. So there's some folks that are nervous about bigger classrooms. And I know that part of this conversation is going to be talking about the middle school model. I am not equipped to speak on the conception of that model, but it would be prudent to look back and understand why it was designed in that way, first and foremost. But yeah, the only information I have is that nervous energy around increased classroom sizes.
Yeah, Priscilla, go ahead.
I also wanted to add something else that I think for the last 3 years that I have been involved in this work, one of the biggest challenge that I have found is that the cost of living in Portland has been forcing families to move once or more than twice a year. And it's hurting our kids really badly because they have to be transferring from schools to schools if they're not McKinney-Vento. So we are constantly seeing this, and it's hurting our staff as well because it takes a long time for the staff to get the kids ready to learn in a classroom. And sometimes by the time they get the kids ready to learn, the kids have to transfer to another school. So it's like a cycle. And the kids are the ones suffering the consequences of these changes. So I do think that this is the biggest reason why I decided to be involved in this work. I think it's such an important work that we're doing. It just will eliminate a lot of the transitions that these kids in Portland are having right now due to all the cost of living and all the movements around the city.
And I would say from the board perspective and this last budget cycle, we saw a lot of parents engage around this, both because where classroom numbers or enrollment was dipping, they were losing, when that happens, we move staff to other schools. And so the school community then changes, and that is sad for people, right? And so people want to, hold their community as it is. So we got a lot of parent and family engagement around that within this last budget season for sure. And I don't know, Ryan, if there's anything else you would add about kind of like what we heard from community in this last budget season around this.
No, I mean, I think that's right. I think that overall, there was a desire to look at what programming can be offered at schools. And there's a tension about like Goldilocks, right? About what's exactly the right size of a school. And you can be too small, and you can be too big, and trying to find that right pressure point. And one of the challenges is that in some of our schools, just based on what the cut size is they end up with really small class sizes. And in other places, they end up in like really big. And so you can have two schools where one, just because of where the lines are, they end up with 14 kids in a class, and their neighboring school ends up with 20 or 22. And so just like trying to figure out that right balance. And so the change piece, right, is what gives everybody anxiety. The end goal of trying to figure out that right balance is where people want to figure that out. And so that the schools have the right resources, they have that right balance of where it's small enough that you have the community and big enough that you're able to afford all the resources you want. And I think that's the tension. Well, asking some of the questions that I think Damon asked, right? Which is, what's the change mean? What would it mean if I'm going to this school and I'm going to be in 5th grade next year? And can I finish out 5th grade, or does it, and those are things that the committee will have to wrestle with, not just on the question of like, what's the boundary and what's it mean for implementation? So, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, sorry if I'm talking too much. I just, another thing, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces here. Another one I've heard from people in my community is about the mismatch between the middle schools and the elementary schools. There's some cases where elementary schools communities get split up between two different middle schools, maybe even 3. I don't know, depending on where having not seen the maps. I know at least at Rose School they get split between two. So I don't know if that's something. Maybe that's not our top priority here, but it is a factor I think we may want to consider, at least if we make changes. All else being equal, do we try to keep the kids from the same elementary school together as they head toward middle school? So just wanted to throw that out there as something to think about. I don't know how important it is, honestly, in the scheme of things. I think given all the other factors we have to consider, right? But it is something we should probably be thinking about at least, and go from there and get some community input and look at, once we dig into the data, maybe there'll be some obvious ways that we can address that. So just wanted to, get that out there, at least to start.
Thanks, Damon. Yeah, that's come up a lot in my neighborhood too. That's Ocean Ave does this same thing. And just to circle back on the middle school model, I know Marisa talked a little bit about that, but Ryan, is there anything else you would add on the middle school piece about like why we're looking at it, or any factors we want to consider there?
I mean, I think that Maritza hit it. Like there's this like tension of the middle school model and teaming, right? Which was originally built around an idea of 100 kids in a team, and some great pieces that it allows. And our middle schools, if you look at the current, they're around 150 to 160 in a grade, which results in teams of between 75 and 80. And so there's some inefficiencies there. They don't sound like a lot. They kind of multiply when you multiply them across 3 grades at each school times 3 schools. And so in some cases, it can end up with smaller class sizes at middle schools versus elementary schools. There's just some interesting dynamics there that it makes sense for us to dig in and look at. And I think what it should just push us to ask is like, are we doing this intentionally? And is it what we want versus is it something that we should adjust? And so that's why it's on the list to look at.
Thank you. I think that was helpful. I'm not sure if everybody knows the middle school model or not. So thanks for that other information. And then the only other thing that I was just thinking of that we haven't named yet is, so we have in the district guidelines for whether a student can walk to school or if they get the option of taking the bus. And the exact numbers are escaping me, Ryan. So if you have them handy, that would be great. But the board has talked a lot about these over the course of the year because the walking distance for our adolescents is pretty high, especially when you think about the winters that we have here, and when we're dealing with chronic absenteeism in the district, which is a national problem, but we feel it very acutely here. Having such long walk distances. Impact our attendance for sure. So that is like another layer. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to name those distances, that would be helpful.
I mean, the one that always sticks out in my head is that middle school is 2 miles, that you have to be 2 miles or more to get transportation unless you have an accommodation in your IEP. And so I don't think any of us would probably walk 2 miles to work. And so that's a really long distance for middle schoolers, but I'm looking to Bill and Priscilla for elementary school and high school because I just don't know it off the top of my head.
I believe it's a mile for elementary school, but kindergarten, I'm not sure. I think kindergarten is less. Bill, do you have that?
I believe kindergarten's half a mile and, pre-K and kindergarten are half a mile and the rest of 1 through 5 is a mile.
Yeah, it does. It does have the safety zones too that they take under consideration. So it's a case by case.
That's the standard. Those are the standard mileage. But then there are situations where there's students that live closer than a mile to Ocean Ave, but they live on the opposite side of Woodford's Corner. So we don't want them crossing through there. So there are some situations where those do vary a little bit, but that's on the safety zone around Reich and East End are or something entirely different also.
Yeah. So I think I just raised that both so we could have a little bit more information, but just that's just like another layer of this boundary piece that I think we'll consider as we get into it. There's a couple other chat questions that just came into the chat that I'm going to read out loud. What would actually be feasible in terms of transportation, given bus driver shortages, and do we have projected demographics from the city to guide us in thinking about what will work, not just now, but X number of years in the future? I think that those are good questions to add to our list. Thank you, Ariel. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. So I think we've done a lot of really good groundwork tonight in terms of getting to know one another and kind of getting on the same page about what is the project in front of us and the context of that project. So our next meeting is going to be September 26th. From 5 to 6:30. It will be virtual. You'll get an email in advance with kind of an agenda and supplemental materials. But in the meantime, between then and now, if you have questions, you can reach out to Ryan or myself, and we'll be happy to get you information or answers as you need them. Anything else? Any last thoughts from folks? Yeah, Grace, go ahead.
There was a question earlier about the map for where to find them. It's on our website, but the map is not big. It's small, but the district boundaries are there. So if you go to enrollment and then you go to click here for find your route or something. There was I can't remember the exact language. Let's see.
Do you have the link for us?
I will. It is in under enrollment, and then if you go down, it says find your school assignment, and if you click on that one, it gives you on the left the school directory that shows you the address, the streets, and what are the assigned schools for those addresses, and on the right is this small map that is not interactive, but it has, and it's small because we took it from a PDF somewhere and we just plop it here. But that's what we have for boundaries.
Thank you, Damon.
School assignment.
Yeah, Damon dropped the link in the chat so you can access it there. And we'll work on getting the bigger version of that we can hopefully zoom in on. Awesome.
And just to add, if we could get that also included the middle school districts, that would be really appreciated. Either like an interactive online map we could pan and zoom on, or even a PDF high resolution would be great, just to sort of get started with digging in here.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And also just to remind folks, if like Damon is probably going to be one of our map experts, but if that is not your strength, that's okay too. Everybody's going to bring a different skill set to this. So don't feel intimidated if that doesn't feel like your contribution. We will find it. Ryan, anything else before? Oh, Rob, go ahead.
Sorry, last question. Are there any protocols for our communications offline? Are we allowed to? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, it is all FOIA-able, which means Freedom of Information Act. Anything that comes in and out of the district, anybody in the community can ask to see it. So you'll just want to keep that in mind, but there's no rules or regulations. In fact, if you want to work on things together or look at things, then maybe we should get a contact list together. Maybe would that be helpful? Let's put that. We'll put that in a follow-up. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Damon.
Just to follow up on that. So I think we used our personal email addresses to communicate on this. Does that mean that our personal email addresses would be subject to FOA here, or is it just the school staff and board members that would be? Also, I'm just curious, is this a public meeting? Technically, I think it is, right? So, members of the public can watch the meeting, but they don't, just to clarify, they don't have a way to directly participate at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So there was a couple different questions in there.
Sorry.
Yes, this is no. That's totally fine.
Got a lot
Yes,
of
this
questions.
no. It's great. I love questions. It is a public meeting because we're technically doing business, so we want to make sure the community can access the business that we're doing here. Which means, and we, there's a couple of different options with public meetings. We could just take notes and post them, but we're choosing to record these and make them available after so that the community can stay up to date on this riveting process if they want to. And then the other piece about being foyable, it wouldn't be your whole email. It would be anything that you sent to one of us within the district, and it would come through and as something that would be foyable for us. So what I mean by that is, like, somebody could say, I'd like to see all the emails that Sarah Lentz has sent to Damon Yakovlev about boundaries. And we would have, it's not as simple as that, but that is kind of like, just think about anything you're writing to us could be public. But I don't think we'll be talking about anything too controversial, but feel free to reach out in any way to have more conversation. Okay, well, thank you, all of you, for showing up so fully today and being so present. And I'm just really excited about the combination of folks and experience that are in this room. And I look forward to seeing you on September 26th. So you can have 5 minutes back in your life. Take good care, and we'll see you next time.